when he thought no one was looking, he actually said the quiet part out loud. He's a cop too. We'll give him a pass. His childhood home, a home that had been in the Albert family for generations, he literally sold it.
What are we doing here, bro?
Both police officers, both trained investigators, got rid of their phones. Both of them.
What? Are these cops trying to be targets, bro?
That's not just coincidence. That, folks, is corruption. So your memory is fading even after 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Oh, this is a disaster. This has gone terrible for them, dude. Day one of the Karen Reed retrial was intense. Karen is accused of striking her police officer boyfriend John O'Keefe with her car and leaving him to die in the snow. We saw opening statements and witness testimony from a first responder. This case has a lot of people involved in it. There's a lot of people that think she's innocent. There's a lot of people that think she's guilty. There's full-blown conspiracies and cover-up accusations. If I say anything dumb, don't take it to heart. Hit subscribe. Love you guys. Let's go. Here's the judge. Some people already don't like her because of apparently she could be biased in some way.
In order to prove Ms. Reed guilty of second-degree murder, the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she committed an unlawful killing and that it was done with malice. In comparison, manslaughter while operating under the influence is an unintentional, unlawful killing caused by wanton or reckless conduct while under the influence of intoxicating liquor. And leaving the scene of an accident after causing personal injury or death requires the Commonwealth to prove that Ms. Reed knowingly collided with John O'Keefe, that she caused him injury or death, and then she fled the scene.
Commonwealth has to prove that she knowingly collided with John O'Keefe and killed him and fled the scene. There she is right there. I think this is a prosecutor for the Commonwealth right here.
On January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter paramedic Timothy Nuttall knew what that meant. His heart skipped a beat, he raced to his equipment, and he picked up his bag, which was meticulous. There was a sign and a signal, and then there was a voice commanding that there was cardiac arrest. The most serious of calls for a firefighter paramedic, that means that a person's heart has stopped. He calmed himself, he steadied himself. This is what the firefighters and paramedics are trained to do, to focus. And when he got there, he saw 3 women surrounding a man lying, not moving on the ground. He walked up to the man, and he reached down, and he tried to find any signs of life, pulse, anything. And he found nothing. And he got up and he walked over to the woman, and he walked over to that defendant, Karen Reed, and he told her that he thinks that that man is gone. And then he heard the yell from Anthony Fomati, the chief. And he said, come back, let's go. Because you'll learn that in the cold, even if somebody's heart stops, even if they're presumed to have passed, sometimes you can still save a life. So you'll see on a dash cam video, you'll hear from testimony, he went back to that man, who was John O'Keefe. He went back to him, and that crew, coordinated effort, they did everything they could to save his life. They got on their knees, they began CPR, and firefighter Nuttall will explain, as he kneeled over John O'Keefe, he looked up, and the defendant approached him, and you'll see it on the video. Now, he wanted any information, because when you're trying to save someone, you want to know, are they on drugs, medication, do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed, and he said, what happened? And you'll hear her words to firefighter Nuttall. She said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And it was at that time, through the words of the defendant, that she admitted what she had done that night. We are here today because John O'Keefe was killed by the actions and conduct of that defendant, Karen Reed. You will learn through this case, through facts, science, and data, you will learn that on January 29th, 2022, the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side in the dark corner near a flagpole. You will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car. He got out and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, you will learn from the science and data as he stood by the side of the road, the defendant in her SUV drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away, the argument was over, it had ended. But then she stopped. She stopped, she put the Lexus into neutral, and she waited. And the facts and the science and data will tell you that despite the fact the argument was over, she then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow, the Lexus tire spun backwards, she went backwards at least 70 feet, she clipped John O'Keefe, he fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull, and there he lay at the corner of Fairview Road, on the ground, lying on top of his cell phone, alone. And then the defendant will later tell that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded. Yet he was. And she simply drove away. You're going to be able to read text messages of their conversations on January 28, 2022. You will see the tension and the unraveling of the relationship. You will read about the discord between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe. You will see that when he would ignore her calls, they would become incessant. When he would try to push away, she would come closer. You will read those text messages, and you will realize that this was the beginning of the end of this relationship.
Trying to show the jury that there was, rocky relationship issues. Even though I'm pretty sure they are on camera at the bar, like hugging each other and kissing. We all know how quickly you can get in a fight with someone.
They studied the cell phone, and there'll be some remarkable data that you will use in this case to find the truth. I want to mention 3 different things you will find in a cell phone.
3 different things in the cell phone. Here we go.
The first is called location data. Waze we've all heard of, Google Maps. Well, at some point that night, John put his Waze on, and Waze is like a breadcrumb that will show exactly where the phone goes, second by second. It is the strongest, most accurate location data that you can have. And that night,
If you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe. I appreciate the support. Back to the video, boys.
John was using Waze. It also will have healthcare data. Healthcare data will show when somebody is moving. Sometimes it's qualified as steps, but it doesn't necessarily mean somebody's stepping, moving their arms, walking, turning. It doesn't show what direction or how far, but it shows the movement of a person. And the third thing, remarkably, will be an expert in this case who found the data file on the phone, and it tracks the temperature of the cell phone battery. That will be critical to your analysis in this case, the temperature of the cell phone battery. You will see from the data, not just the cell phone data, but there's some other very important data, and the other piece of data that goes hand in glove with the cell phone is information on the defendant's Lexus vehicle chips. You might have heard of black box in an airplane, where there's some type of event that captures a small amount of time. Well, that was captured in the defendant's Lexus. That black box information with the cell phone data will tell you everything you need to know in this case. It will bring us step by step through the entire night to the death of Donald P. And so they leave the waterfall bar at 12:12, and you'll see that the ignition goes on to the defendant's Lexus. And both John O'Keefe and the defendant in the car, they decide that they're going to go back to 34th Fairview Road, where we talked about earlier. They're going to go there for a get-together for one of the homeowner's sons who's having a birthday party.
Remember, the jury should not know anything. A lot of people watching this video, you know a lot more than this jury knows. So they're going in this blind. They're just seeing the evidence is presented to them.
12:29, she texts again. Are you coming in? You'll hear that Gemma and others look out the window and see the defendant's Lexus in front of the flagpole at the far end. It's snowy, it's dark, it's windy. They're waiting.
Her and John O'Keefe were in the car. Everyone was driving to this house to meet up at a house now after the bar. One of the witnesses even saw her car out front.
At 12:31, 56, he begins to move. He will have 20 seconds before he falls. 20 seconds. He gets out of the car, the Lexus, and in that 20 seconds, you'll hear that user initiated. He looks at the phone, at the text message to Gemma Cage. It's now 12:32:09. He closes the phone the last time. It will be the last time he uses that phone. From the waterfall bar, you see that he didn't that phone. And at that time, 12:32:09, last user, he has 7 more seconds to move before he lied dormant the rest of the night. We'll also have the information from the defendant's Lexus black box. The clocks run differently than 30-second difference, but it's right in the heart of that time. And you will see through the data at that time, when he makes his last movements with the phone, is when her car leaves 34 feet at least, stops, and then shoots into reverse with the tire spinning right towards him. You'll know they're arguing because the next morning she tells the firefighter, I'm sad because our last moments were fighting.
Our last moments were fighting. I mean, in 99% of cases, if a wife or husband said that, or boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, that's a red flag to a detective at least. I mean, no matter what, in a relationship, if that person is killed or murdered or whatever, they're going to be investigated.
The evidence will make clear that she knew he was there. She did not call 911. She did not go back to him. She did not leave an anonymous tip. She left him. 1:14, she calls her mother. No answer. 1:14:53. Battery temperature. The defendant had healthcare data on her phone as well, and you'll hear that it stops around that time. You'll later learn that she admits to falling asleep with note. 5 o'clock, she is frantic. She wakes up John's niece, and she is unpalatable. She is yelling, she's screaming, she asks for the niece to call Jen McCabe. She calls Jen McCabe, and you'll hear Jen McCabe recount. Out of deep sleep, she wakes up and she hears, Jen, Jen, Jen. Screaming Jen's name. John's dead. Hangs up the phone. Jen McCabe calls back. She told, well, I left him at the waterfall. At the beginning of the tunnel. She told Jen McCabe, I left him at the waterfall. Jen calls back and says, you saw him go front. You did leave at the waterfall. She hangs up.
So at one point, Karen lied, saying she left him somewhere else to like a friend or something?
Terry Roberts, a friend of John O'Keefe. Someone who's not friends with the defendant, but they know because they helped raise the kids when they interacted. She had nothing to do with the night before. Wasn't at the bars. Was home with her family. She calls her and says, I think John got hit by a clock. I think he's dead. Now Terry, with that information, calls 911. She calls hospitals. You can hear her voice. She's concerned. Not him. And then she has another call from the defendant. And she tells the defendant, come to my house. I will help you look at him. And the defendant says, I was so drunk last night, I don't remember anything. Waiting for her to arrive, she learns she doesn't arrive. Instead, the defendant goes to Jen McCabe's house. Terry Roberts, the other friend, then goes to Jen McCabe's house, pulled behind the car. And when she does, she's on Bluetooth, and she can hear the defendant say, my taillight's broken, my taillight's broken. And she looks, and the snow packed in the right taillight, she can see a piece of the taillight missing. The defendant desperately wants to go to 34th Fairview Road. Terry Roberts takes over and says, we're going to go back to John's house. Maybe he's in the house and we didn't see him. So both cars, driven by Terry Roberts and then Jen McCabe, with the defendant, go back to John O'Keefe's house. You'll see a ring video. You see them go into the house and they look around, and you'll hear about the woman, Jen and Terry, enlisted into this task. Look for John O'Keefe. They cannot find him. And then when Terry Roberts comes into a room, she sees, rather than looking, the defendant simply standing there, staring at the wall. And when they get close to the edge of 34th Fairview, you hear the defendant start to scream, there he is! Both women look and they can't see anything. She starts kicking the door. The defendant's kicking the door. Let me out! Terry Roberts stops the car and lets her out, and she sees the defendant run exactly to where John O'Keefe is in the darkness. That's where she left him. Carrie gets out of the car, starts to walk towards where the defendant is, and she sees the defendant lying on a body. She can't tell who it is because the face is still covered with snow. And she comes over and looks, and she wipes off the snow from John O'Keefe's face. She realizes he's one of her best friends in the world is John O'Keefe. And she starts to try to do first aid. They start to move him, and coincidentally at 6:06 when they start to move him, the cold air hits that cell phone battery, it drops from 50 to 43 degrees. And they try, Jen McCabe calls 911. And that's when a police officer arrives, firefighter not all of his crew. And when they lift him, that cell phone battery is shut down to 37 degrees. Henry Roberts picks it up and puts it in her pocket, and it immediately starts to warm. As she moves, the healthcare data shows movement starts again. At that point, nobody knows what happened. The Canton Police Department comes. You can see the police cars and cruisers. They're not sure, so they look in the area where John's body is and find a glass from the bar. Their body. They find blood spots. They try to put the blood spots in plastic containers. They don't know what they're looking for at this point. There's no information. They don't believe or know that there's a crime. They just know that John O'Keefe somehow ended up here. The defendant was screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" And you will learn that when police start getting some of the information, they learn about the broken tail light, they learn information that she had told people that she had hit him. They went down to see her, and on their way down, they decided they would get a warrant to take Alexis. When they get down to Dayton, where the car is, you'll hear from Trooper Buchanan. He took a look and you can see the missus. They went in and spoke briefly to the defendant. They took the car, they brought it back to Canton. John O'Keefe fell backwards and hit his head after he was clipped by a car. And you're going to hear from a very renowned doctor and neurosurgeon who's treated thousands and thousands of patients. And the wound on the back of the head, they fell backwards by the cracked skull. It's called a basal fracture. It created an injury called counter coup. And this neurosurgeon will tell you, treated thousands of patients, that this injury, with reasonable degree of medical certainty, is counter coup caused by falling backwards. When the medical examiner for the state looked at it, they generally said blunt force trauma had it undetermined. How the data from that black box coincides with the cell phone and the movements of the car the moments before, during, and after the defendant struck John O'Keefe with her car. This case will come down to the science and the data. The science and the data, the cell phone is the best of the stories. It doesn't suffer from intoxication, it doesn't suffer from memory loss, it doesn't suffer from emotion, pride, or prejudice. It is facts, it is data. And that facts and data will lead you to the truth in this case. But after Ms. Reed was charged, she began what you'll learn as a campaign. A campaign to make public statements. 2020, Nightline, Fox 25, a documentary. And we've had an opportunity to get many of her statements in the footage, but we're going to show much of you. And her statements to you will confirm what you already know from the science and data, what you will already conclude from the facts independent about what she did that night. Her word will simply confirm that your judgment is sound. And you're going to hear from her own lips in many of her statements, her admissions to extraordinary intoxications, her admissions to driving the Alexis, her admissions to being angry at dawn that night. And as I say, her admissions.
Her dumbass did like a whole documentary fucking interview bullshit, dude. In what world would you do that before the trial is over or the retrial even starts? Why would you do this? So now they're using it against her because she probably said some dumb shit in this documentary.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
Why would her lawyers let her do this?
Ladies and gentlemen, I simply ask you to follow the evidence, follow the science, follow the data. Ignore speculation, surmise, conjecture. Stay true to the evidence. It will lead you to the truth. That on January 29, 2022, a very intoxicated defendant was angry and arguing about the relationship with John O'Keefe. And after the fight was over, she left, but she brought the fight back to him in the form of her SUV. She clipped him, he fell backwards, he broke his head, and then this man who helped, a lifetime of help, was left at the corner of that yard, left to die with no help. The facts, the data, and the evidence will bring you the truth, and the defendant's own words will confirm everything you've already concluded.
Yikes. All right, defense lawyers about to come up here and put their dicks on the table. They're going to try to say this whole shit is a lie. She's being framed. There's other people involved. All right, Karen's defense lawyer, opening statements.
Will establish above everything else 3 points. There was no collision with John O'Keefe. There was no collision. There was no collision. John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle. Period. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. You'll learn that the Commonwealth has pinned its entire case on a brazen and a flawed assertion that is untethered, unconnected to the facts and to the evidence. And their assertion is contrary to science. Because at the end of the day, folks, there was no collision with John O'Keefe. How does Karen Reed end up sitting in that chair on trial for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it, and it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation. A text message of a now fired Massachusetts State Police officer named Michael Proctor.
Proctor is a name I remember. Apparently this guy was really shady, and he's fired now over this whole thing, I think. Like, he's literally got fired over this.
He was the lead investigator on this case, and he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop, who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Answer, nope. He's a Boston cop, too.
So he's putting the narrative out there to the jury. Cops are sticking together. The house that the body was out front of was also a cop. He's not going to catch any shit. We're not looking into him.
That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. During the course of this trial, you'll learn much more about Mr. Proctor, why he said that, and what it really means. What you'll see and hear in this courtroom in the coming weeks is not just a story of a tragic loss. And make no mistake, John O'Keefe's death is and was a tragic loss. But the story you'll hear is about an investigation that was riddled with errors from the beginning, a rush to judgment, conflicted, and corrupted from the start. Corrupted by bias, corrupted by incompetence, and corrupted by deceit. Finally, it was corrupted by a deliberate effort to avoid and to cover up the very truth that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it. And they can't meet their extreme burden of proof, which the court will tell you is beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. Picture the scene. Blood-curdling screams. Ambulances, emergency lights on, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol cruisers, police officers, first responders, firefighters, all swarming all over Brian Albert's lawn. Literally feet under his bedroom window. Yet Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder himself, never came outside. Never went outside to see what the chaos was about, never went outside to see if he could assist a man in need, never walked outside his house to see if he could help a fallen fellow officer on his own front lawn.
For real? That's a little bit of a red flag, right?
You'll learn that lead investigator for the Massachusetts Police, Michael Proctor, never set foot inside Brian Albert's house that day. Never engaged in any investigation inside that house that day, even though a party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house, and even though a Boston police officer was found dead or dying just mere feet from the front door on that lawn. He never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses, he never properly collected evidence, he never secured the evidence, he never searched for signs of a struggle inside or outside the home, he never properly canvassed the neighborhood.
Lawyer 101. Shitty investigation, didn't do their job.
Never did any of these things, even though fellow officers of Michael Proctor's actually mentioned, in their words, not mine, that it looked like John O'Keefe may have been, quote, in a fight. You'll have questions about that conduct. During the course of this trial, you'll find that the Commonwealth will not have answers. You'll see from the evidence in this case that this case carries a malignancy, one that is spread through the investigation, it's spread through the prosecution from the very start, from the jump. A cancer that cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured. And that cancer has a name. His name is Michael Proctor. Now, you didn't hear his name in the prosecution's opening statement. Not once. And I suspect that was probably by design. But make no mistake about it. The evidence will show in this case that Michael Proctor is the very definition of the Commonwealth's case. He was the lead investigator on the case officer, the architect of the entire prosecution. You'll learn there's not a single part of this case, folks, not a single part, that he didn't touch, that he didn't direct, that he didn't orchestrate personally. Every single bit of it has his fingerprints on it. You'll learn that Michael Proctor was a longtime family friend of the Alberts, and he's been disgraced by his own agency. Not by us, by the Massachusetts State Police. Investigated, suspended, and fired. The evidence will show that Massachusetts State Police found him guilty, found Michael Proctor guilty of bringing dishonor to the department for his conduct, not in some other case, not in some tangential case. In this case, the investigation of Karen Reed.
I mean, the biggest of red flags right there. Lead investigators fired over the case that they're... Imagine what the jury's thinking. What the fuck are we doing here?
Conduct that included bias in favor of his friends, the all-powerful Albert family, and bias against my client, Miss Reed, the outsider. Do you have any idea how hard it is for a state trooper to get fired? The evidence is going to show that Michael Proctor earned it. You'll hear that within hours of a Boston police officer being found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, who had investigated exactly nothing up to this point, right at the beginning, made an early pronouncement that Brian Albert himself was not going to, quote, catch any shit, end quote. And that was for one reason, and one reason only. He's a Boston cop. The evidence will show that Michael Proctor made this statement in a text conversation with his high school buddies. A text he never thought would see the light of day, certainly never thought we would get a hold of. And when he thought no one was looking, he actually said the quiet part out loud. He's a cop too. We'll give him a pass. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, rank has its privileges. The evidence will show that's privileges that you don't get and I don't get. But apparently a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, and his friends, they do get. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, he didn't care about finding the truth. In his world, his priority was to protect the brotherhood, to protect that blue wall, to protect his friends, who were at the Alberts house that night. I want to take a step back, if I could, and spend the next few minutes talking a little bit more detail about what the actual facts in this case will show, not based on speculation, not based on surmise, not based on guesswork or conjecture, but the actual true facts that you will learn through the course of this trial. On January 28, 2022, it was a Friday night. John and Karen had made plans to meet up with friends for drinks. It was a happy and normal night for them. They were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits, nothing out of the ordinary. They started at a local watering hole called C.F. McCarthy's. You've heard that name before and you'll hear it again. And eventually they made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, another bar where they ended up. When they got to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, the Albert family was already there, already heavily drinking. You'll learn that this was no ordinary family, the Alberts. The Albert family was a well-known Canton family. Some might even describe them as a very powerful Canton family. Brian Albert was there at the Waterfall. You'll hear that he's a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there with him. His brother, Chris Albert, a powerful Canton politician. He sits on the select board. The select board actually governs the police department, the Canton PD. He was there. His wife, Julie Albert, was there. Their daughter, Caitlin Albert, was there. His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matt McCabe, was also there. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. You'll learn that a man by the name of Brian Higgins, also a law enforcement officer, and longtime friend, longtime pal of Brian Albert, he was also there. And the two of them, the two Bryans, had been drinking most of the night together.
So a bunch of drunk cops and family, friends and shit in this house. I'm guessing they never really got investigated. It's a good defense. There's shining light on kind of the bias in police stations.
Video footage from the waterfall, which will show you that Karen and John were happy. They were affectionate. They were caring. They were loving. Just business as usual, out on a date on a Friday night. But that exact same video footage which lead investigator Michael Proctor plainly chose to ignore that video footage. It paints a very different picture of Brian Higgins. You'll learn that Higgins had romantic designs for Karen. That becomes important. Brian Higgins had engaged Karen in flirtatious texts, but days earlier she had put a stop to it. She had ghosted him, in common parlance. In other words, just ignored him. The evidence will show that the first time he saw her presence, after being rejected by her, was when she walked into the Waterfall Bar and Grill, along with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At 11:58 p.m., just minutes before John ultimately arrived at the Albert residence, you'll see a video at the Waterfall of an unsettling interaction, troubling interaction between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. And unlike the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, in this case, you won't ignore that evidence. As the bar was closing around 12 midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house for a get-together to just keep the night going. And you'll learn that Karen and John ultimately pulled up to the house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were at the right address. And the evidence will establish that John got out of the SUV and went into the house. Let me say that again. The facts unequivocally, the data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night.
Wow. So the prosecutors say he never got in the house. He's saying data and everything suggests he did.
Eyewitnesses and forensic data will establish that fact. When he didn't come back out, you'll learn that Karen grew increasingly frustrated. She got upset. She was left alone in a car, in the cold, in the middle of the night, with the car idling. John had gone into the house. She expected him to come right back out, and when he didn't, seconds turned into minutes, and minutes started to clock away. She left John a voicemail, then another voicemail, voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, text messages. But he was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. You'll hear that Karen was very agitated. You'll hear some voicemails where she's swearing. You'll hear voicemails where she calls him names. There's name calling. But you'll also hear the context of those voicemails. And every single one of them, every single one of those voicemails was left for John after he failed to come back out of the house, after he failed to respond to her voicemails and to her texts. She will tell you that the injury to the back of John's head, first of all, was immediately incapacitating. And that has meaning. At the moment he suffered that fatal head injury, he couldn't walk, talk, grab his phone, cry for help, nothing. He was completely incapacitated, completely unconscious from the moment he suffered that injury. He was completely still and incapable of interacting with anyone or anything. But the doctor will tell you something more, and just as important. She'll tell you that John O'Keefe did not suffer from hypothermia, as the Commonwealth will undoubtedly allege. His body showed no signs of it. No frostbite, no cold-induced injuries to his organs, no damage based on cold or frost. Ladies and gentlemen, the scientific evidence and the medical evidence will establish that John O'Keefe had to be injured somewhere else, somewhere warmer, and his body had to have been moved out into the cold.
So now he's basically suggesting he was killed inside the house and dragged outside or something.
And that's where, ultimately at 6 a.m., Karen found him the next morning. You will learn that John did not have a single injury consistent with being hit by a car. Let me say that again. The evidence will establish that John did not suffer a single injury on his body consistent with having been hit by a car. Not one. You'll learn that John's torso, his ribs, his chest, his arms, his hips, his legs, his knees, his ankles, his feet, all of them, no broken bones, no fractures, no contusions, no torn ligaments, no internal injuries, not even a bruise. Nothing consistent with a car accident, despite the Commonwealth's contention that he was slammed into by a 6,000-pound SUV. Not a bruise. Dr. Laposada will tell you with medical certainty that, in fact, John was not struck by a vehicle. Medically and scientifically, he could not have been struck by a vehicle. Therefore, as I said, there was no collision. She will tell you that the patterned abrasions on John's right arm, the patterned abrasions you see over my left shoulder, they're not the result of being struck by a car or a taillight. You'll take one look at these injuries and you'll agree with Dr. Laposada. The evidence will show that these injuries are from an animal, like a large dog.
I might have to blur this, but this is basically scratch marks on this guy's arm. It doesn't look like he was hit by a car here.
The large dog that was inside the Albert house that night.
And there's a dog inside the house, apparently. So defense is doing what any defense would do here.
You'll learn that Brian Albert has actually admitted that his large dog, the family dog, is, quote, not good with strangers. And of course, John, never having been to the house before, was a stranger that night. You'll also learn that oddly, very oddly, after having their family pet for 7 years, a short time after this incident, the Alberts got rid of that dog. They called it rehoming her, that she was gone. Dr. Laposada will also tell you that the injury to John's head was not the result of falling backward onto a flat lawn, cold or otherwise. Rather, Dr. Laposada will tell you with medical certainty that the injury pattern to his scalp was produced by an impact from a raised or ledged surface, a surface that does not exist on Brian Albert's front lawn where John was found. The medical evidence will establish no hypothermia, no injuries from a car strike, no collision with a motor vehicle. And forensic analysis of John's cell phone, Mr. Brennan mentioned that in his opening statement, the Commonwealth's own expert will ultimately support the exact facts that I just told you, including the temperature data. John O'Keefe was injured someplace warmer, and he was moved. That alone is reasonable doubt, but there's much more.
Pointing out reasonable doubt.
Not a single person, not one, not a single person, saw a 6'2", 216-pound man laying sprawled in the front lawn in dark clothing on a light white dusting of snow. Not one. Then the evidence will also show that every one of those same people drove by that same spot, not walked by it, drove by it to leave the house, and still not one of them saw John laying in the yard when they left between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning.
Now, how is that possible with headlights and everything? Was it more snowy than he's describing, or is that's fucking ridiculous?
You'll hear that Michael Proctor, oh, he's not done yet, Mr. Proctor. You'll hear that Michael Proctor wrote a report where he claimed that Fairview had not been plowed that night. You'll learn that that was completely false. That was a lie. Michael Proctor did not want any more witnesses. He didn't want the truth, and he falsely claimed that the road was never plowed. You'll learn that he wouldn't look for the plow driver, but we did, and we found, and we'll introduce you to, Brian Loughran. He plowed Fairview that night, and what he's going to tell you is that there was no body on that lawn at 2:30 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Loughran passed by 34 Fairview, traveling right next to Brian Albert's front yard, and at 2:30 a.m., John O'Keefe was not there. At 3:30 a.m., he looked down the street, and in the very spot precisely where Karen would later find John's body laying at 6 a.m., there was a car parked in front of it, a Ford Edge. You're going to ask yourself, who's moving a car at 3:30 in the morning into a blizzard on the side of the road? You'll learn that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, intentionally ignored this fact as well. He did no investigation to find out who owned a Ford Edge. But again, and the evidence will establish that a Ford Edge happens to be a favorite model of the Albert family. More than one Albert owned a Ford Edge at the time. You'll learn that those facts will add to the mounting and the overwhelming evidence that there was no collision, and John O'Keefe's body was moved onto that lawn. You'll be introduced to science and physics, even from the Commonwealth's own experts. That science will establish that Karen Reed's SUV was not damaged by hitting a pedestrian, and conversely, John O'Keefe's injuries did not come from being struck. The Commonwealth mentioned triggering events, but what you'll actually learn from the experts, some of them the Commonwealth's own experts, is that a triggering event is not evidence of an accident. It does not evidence a collision. That's why we're here. A collision. And there's no evidence of one. Zero. You'll also find that those exact sort of triggering events that the Commonwealth will rely on are relatively commonplace on Karen's SUV, and none of them are associated with a claim of a collision. You'll learn that after a long night of heavy drinking, Brian Higgins left the Albert residence, but he didn't drive home. Rather, he drove over to the Canton Police Department, where he kept an office at about 1:25 a.m. Not a Canton police officer, but he kept an office there. Why go back to his office at 1:25 a.m.? Why go back to the Canton Police Department at 1:25 in the morning on the night of a blizzard? You'll learn that while there, Higgins made a call at 1:30 a.m. Higgins will later deny that he made that call. You'll find that curious. And his explanation for that late-night visit to Canton PD, you'll find that it changes nearly every time he's asked about it.
There is some red flags going on here with these fucking cops that are in this house.
Albert's house, Brian Albert actually claimed he had no contact with anybody else except his wife. No contact until he woke up the next morning. So he says. Then you'll learn that that, too, is a complete lie. His phone records establish that he placed a call to none other than Brian Higgins at 2:22 a.m., shortly after Higgins completed that late-night visit over to Canton PD. What did they possibly need to talk about at 2:22 a.m. that night? The evidence will establish that Brian Albert called Brian Higgins first. Brian Albert then disconnected that call when Higgins didn't answer it. Seconds later, Brian Higgins returned the call. Brian Albert then did answer that call. They spoke for 22 full seconds, had a conversation, then they both hung up their respective phones. You'll learn that when they were asked about these calls and conversations, both Brian Albert and Brian Higgins lied about it. Both of them. They said they never had a call with each other. But then ultimately, when they were confronted with their own cell phone records and they could no longer deny the calls, they were asked independently, explain yourself. And they both came up with the exact same explanation. A butt dial. The evidence will make you question, why did Albert and Higgins speak at 2:22 a.m.? And why did they both try to cover up that phone call? You'll also learn after this incident and within days of
That's bizarre.
one another, both Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, both police officers, both trained investigators, got rid of their phones. Both of them.
What? Are these cops trying to be targets, bro? It's almost like they want to be involved, or maybe they were involved.
And what else you'll learn Brian Albert got rid of? Shortly after this incident, Brian Albert got rid of his house. The whole thing. Just sold it. His childhood home, a home that had been in the Albert family for generations. He literally sold it mere months after this incident.
Okay. What are we doing here, bro? If the house has been in the family for generations, that's a red flag.
Dog rehomed, phones destroyed, house sold. You'll learn that all these things happened shortly after the incident where John O'Keefe was found unresponsive and dying in Brian Albert's front lawn. And you'll also learn that Michael Proctor looked the other way. He did not investigate any of what I'm telling you. He pre-selected Karen Reed from the start, and he ignored everything and everyone else. Let's get back to what was happening with the others while Karen slept. What you'll learn during this trial is that Brian Albert's sister-in-law, you've heard her name before, Jennifer McCabe, she was at the waterfall that night, and she was over at the Albert's house that evening as well. She left the after-hours gathering about 2 a.m., a little before 2 a.m., got home around 2 a.m., and you'll learn that according to the Commonwealth's own evidence, from a forensic software program called Physical Analyzer made by Celebrite, it's considered the gold standard for forensic tools, you'll learn that a Google search was discovered on Jennifer McCabe's phone. A Google search that Michael Proctor and his investigators never revealed to us, but we found anyway.
Never revealed? Isn't that Brady evidence?
Google search that was time-stamped, according to their own data, at 2:27 a.m., 5 minutes after that 2:22 a.m. call that Higgins and Albert denied having. And that Google search on Jennifer McCabe's phone read, "Hoss-long to die in cold." Hoss-long to die in cold. Now, she misspelled the first word. Hoss is supposed to be how, but the meaning's the same. How long does it take to die in the cold? Time-stamped, 2:27.
No, that's a red flag if I've ever heard one.
And then that search was also noted by the same Celebrite program as having been deleted. The evidence will force you to ask, why is there a search on her phone? Why is it logged at 2:27 a.m. when the Commonwealth claims that she first learned of John's death and where his body was hours later at 6 a.m.? So what you'll learn is that while Karen slept, here's what was actually happening by some other very busy bees. 1:25 a.m., Brian Higgins makes an unexpected visit to Canton PD. 1:30 a.m., he makes a phone call that he later denies ever making. At 2:22 a.m., Brian Higgins and Brian Albert talk. They both deny and lie about having made that phone call. 2:27 a.m., 5 minutes later, a Google search appears on Jennifer McCabe's phone, Hoss-long to die in cold, hours before John's body was ever discovered. A Google search she denies making, and that she later, or at least it was later logged as deleted. Meanwhile, at 2:30 a.m., the plow driver confirms that O'Keefe's body was not on the lawn of Brian Albert's house, not at 2:30 in the morning. And at 3:30 in the morning, that area was obstructed by a Ford Edge. A Ford Edge like the one the Albert family liked to own. The evidence will show in the meantime, Karen dozed in and out of a fitful sleep for the rest of the night, only to awaken just before 5 a.m., and that's when she realized, in a panic, John had never come home. And you'll see, it wasn't like John to not come home. That morning, you'll see and hear evidence that Karen's emotions had morphed. It had gone from frustration and anger, which you'll hear in the voicemails, to abject fear. Fear that something bad had happened. The evidence will establish by this time, Karen was panic-stricken. She had a feeling something was very, very wrong. She backed out of the garage, and during the course of the trial, you'll hear that she actually struck another car with that right rear taillight. During the course of this trial, the Commonwealth is going to desperately claim that Karen Reed's taillight was actually damaged by hitting John O'Keefe. They'll have no evidence of it, mind you. None. But they'll make the claim.
So now the defense is saying they have an alternate theory on how the taillight was broken. I wonder if there's like video surveillance or pictures of her car at certain times, maybe.
We'll show you a video of exactly how that taillight was originally damaged, or exactly what happened at 5:07 in the morning. The facts will show that it was damaged in John's own driveway at 5:07 when Karen backed up and made contact with another car in the driveway. This is 5 hours after she dropped John off, and he went into the Albert residence. As a result, the taillight was minimally cracked, but it wasn't completely shattered or damaged or broken. And that's the condition of the SUV when Michael Proctor got a hold of it. That becomes important. You'll hear from an independent police officer, an eyewitness to the damage on that SUV, someone not connected to Michael Proctor or under his control. And he'll tell you that he saw the taillight damaged before it was in Michael Proctor's possession, but it was not completely shattered. And you won't have to speculate how that taillight got cracked originally. You'll see it for yourself. It's on video. And later, when she found him at 6 a.m. on the lawn, where she last saw him going toward the house, her mind started reeling, oh my God, did a plow hit him? Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? What could have happened to him? And that video clip that you saw, out of context, when she said the words, he did not look like he was mortally wounded, she's not talking about at midnight. She's talking about at 6 a.m. when she found him. That's what she was talking about.
Oh, so you're saying it's out of context. Okay.
That's a person trying to make sense of an unexplainable circumstance, a natural concern of a bereaved significant other. A woman desperately trying to piece together what could have happened on this tragic night. John didn't come home. And the evidence will show that Karen Reed never said, I hit him. Never. Not in the background of the 911 recording, not on any dash cam video, not on any audio, not on any police body cam, not to a first responder. It's never mentioned in a single report. It's never reported in a single report from January 29th, not by one person, because it never happened.
Wait, hold on. It's never in any reports or anything?
The evidence will show that the evidence will show that there were at least 13 members of law enforcement or first responders and 2 civilian witnesses that were intently focused on what was happening at that scene. They were all over the lawn. They were all over Karen. Officer Seraph, Mullaney, Good, Lank, EMT Nuttall, Flamati, Kelly, Walsh, Woodbury, Whitley, Becker, Robery, McLaughlin, Carrie Roberts, Jennifer McCabe. They were all there, watching and listening. On January 29th, when John O'Keefe was found, not one first responder reported having heard Karen Reed say the words, "I hit him."
What? So why is the Commonwealth starting out their whole shit with something that wasn't reported initially?
Not one civilian reported having heard Karen Reed say, "I hit him." The facts will show that the first time this improved statement was ever claimed to have been made was some 24 hours later by a single EMT in an interview. Now listen to this. In an interview coordinated by a Canton police detective named Kevin Albert, Brian Albert's brother.
Oh, he's related. Okay, yeah.
And what's more, you'll learn that Katie McLaughlin, that's the EMT, that's the single EMT, the first person to have claimed to have heard this unrecorded and unreported statement, is years-long, close personal friends with a young woman named Caitlin Albert. You heard that right. It's Brian Albert's daughter.
Interesting. So everything's all connected here, is what the defense is saying. Everyone's friends with everyone, and suddenly statements are coming out.
His sister was close friends with Julie Albert. He personally sat at head tables at weddings, or at a head table at weddings with the Albert family. He entrusted the Alberts with babysitting his own children. You heard that correctly. And yet he was the lead detective assigned to investigate the circumstances of a Boston police officer laying dead on the Alberts' front lawn.
Conflict of interest, if I've ever heard one right there. What are we doing?
That's not just bias, you'll learn. That's not just coincidence. That, folks, is corruption. Michael Proctor was alone with all the critical evidence in this case, alone with Karen Reed's phone, alone with John's phone, alone with video footage, alone with the taillight material, alone when he claimed to recover evidence from 34 Fairview. He wrote the search warrants, he transported the evidence, he secured it, he submitted it, he did it all. That's Michael Proctor. And he did it without any reasonable oversight.
This lawyer seems very concise, straight to the point, listing everything. Like, he's doing a really good job.
In the trial that he intentionally lied and fabricated evidence during the course of this investigation. He lied in reports, warrants, he lied under oath. He lied about the time that he actually secured Karen Reed's vehicle. Why? Why would he lie about that? The evidence will give you the answer. He lied because he did not want it revealed that he had access to that vehicle and he had access to that taillight before any taillight fragments were found at 34 Fairview. He had access to the vehicle before a single piece of taillight material was ever found at the scene.
Interesting. So is he hinting that the taillight fragments were planted because he got access to it before?
The first and second search found zero. Nothing. Nothing around John's body, nothing in the street, not one piece of taillight fragment.
How is that possible? I mean, I know it's snowy, but that's crazy. Like, there's no taillight fragments anywhere?
Once Michael Proctor had that SUV and had the taillight in his custody and control, suddenly items started magically showing up. And not just a few items. 46 pieces of bright red taillight laying in the snow.
What? 46?
Supposedly found in the exact same spot that was searched not once, but twice by independent officers. It came up with zero. DNA was on the taillight, but you'll learn that there was no DNA on the actual shards that they claim came in contact with John's arm. There was no blood, no tissue, no skin, no DNA on a single shard of plastic that they claim cut deep abrasions into John's arm.
What? How is that possible? Is that a thing? All those scratch marks.
The DNA that was actually found, the actual science will show, was found outside of the taillight housing where anyone with access to that vehicle would have touched. And it wasn't just one male's DNA. In that exact same sample, there were 3 men found. John and 2 unidentified males. So unless the Commonwealth is going to shift their theory that SUV hit 3 men that night, their entire theory falls apart. And speaking of DNA, the evidence will further establish that John O'Keefe's shoe, the one that he was wearing when he was found, was sampled. And that DNA revealed 5, count them, 5 unidentified males. Recall that the evidence will establish independently that John was injured someplace warmer and had to be moved onto that lawn. 5 unidentified males touching that shoe. After conducting the autopsy herself, after examining John's injuries in detail, she refused to conclude that John's death was a homicide based on the Commonwealth's presentation and their theory. That's right. The Commonwealth's own medical examiner will not deem the manner of death in this case, a homicide.
Why is the Commonwealth prosecuting this case? It almost seems like they're forcing it, right? I feel like there's going to be a lot of doubt in these jurors' heads, dude.
She's the victim of a botched and biased and corrupted investigation that was never about the truth, folks. It was about preserving loyalty. You'll find that this case is the very definition of reasonable doubt. And at the end of this trial, we'll ask you to return the only verdicts, all 3 of them, that are consistent with the evidence, the science, the truth, and justice. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
Hey man, Mr. Jackson killed that opening statement, I'm gonna be honest. I think this is the first responder or firefighter or whatever that heard Karen apparently say, I hit him.
So my name is Timothy Nuttall. I'm 28 years old. I've been a firefighter paramedic ever since I graduated high school. So as we approached the scene, as I said, there were 3 individuals, and Canton police were on scene as well. And then there was what appeared to be a human figure laying supine in the snow. I'd say about 6 to 8 feet, kind of where the sidewalk met the front lawn. From there, I made my way directly over to that individual and started checking for signs of life.
How was his skin to the touch?
He was very cold to the touch.
He wasn't warm?
No.
Did you come to any initial quick assessments or conclusions in your mind?
So I found, like I said, I checked for signs of life, the carotid, the signs of breathing. I found none. The three individuals that were there, and just said, hey, I just have found no signs of life. We're going to see the next steps. And as I was saying that was when Anthony Flamati, who is the lead paramedic on this, made the decision this is a workable cardiac arrest.
Let me ask you 2 questions. The first is, as a paramedic firefighter, are there times when you're the lead paramedic on a call?
Yes, sir.
And so it changes call by call, but this one was firefighter or paramedic Flamati's lead?
Correct. He was the lead paramedic on this call. Realized that this gentleman was very cold to the touch, and that this was now a hypothermic cardiac arrest, or a cardiac arrest in a hypothermic setting, which means as providers, we have a duty to initiate life-saving measures, CPR, ventilation, and continue those efforts until we get him to a hospital and a physician is able to take over and they're able to monitor his core body temperature for a certain amount of time. I saw a middle-aged female with blood on her face, and real quick, as I was in the process of providing ventilations, I said, do you know this person?
The person that you looked up and saw that was standing over you with blood on her face, do you recognize that person in this courtroom?
Yes, sir.
With the court's permission, sir, could you point out that person that you looked up and saw?
In between Mr. Jackson or next to Mr. Jackson.
And when you looked up and saw that person and asked about any background, what did she say to you?
I hit him.
How clearly do you remember her words saying to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I remember it very distinctly.
So remember, the defense says he didn't say this until 24 hours later being interviewed by someone who's connected. You notice the voice crack when he said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
Do some stand out more than others?
Yes, sir.
Did this particular moment stand out more as compared to your typical or most calls that you've been to?
It did, just because of the setting. I mean, it was the weather, it was the unknown factors, and it was the attempting to try and get information and not really being able to glean anything from that.
Jesus, look, it's like a blizzard, man.
Any signs of life or breathing.
Is that you approaching?
Yes, sir.
Stop, please. After informing your return, is that after Firefighter Flamati called you?
So right after that, when I turned around, that was when Tony said, hey, we're working this.
Okay. Please continue. Stop, please.
So that's Karen running around all panicked, I think.
Do you see a person come over to where you are?
Yes, sir.
Is it at that point or another moment when the defendant said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
It was right there, sir.
Could you continue, please? Could you stop for a moment? There's no voices or
Yeah, we didn't hear it.
noises from people coming through that audio. When you were there that night, throughout the event, was it silent or were people speaking? Did you hear people speaking?
There was, as I noted when I got out of the truck, there was quite a bit of screaming. It was quite chaotic. The wind was also a factor, but there were people around. They were speaking within themselves too, but there was screaming, there was wind, and there was...
I mean, obviously we're not going to be able to hear it unless she screamed, I hit him, I hit him. But still, I mean, not really much besides what he says at least. So jury has to take his credibility into account there. Karen
Sir, are you
is
still at
just,
the flagpole?
Yes, sir, I'm kneeling at the head of the patient.
Karen is just running around. So front of the house, he's like around here somewhere, I'm guessing. That's where the body was. Oh boy. Defense cross, here we go.
What about the testimony from last year?
We did go over the testimony from last year, yes, sir.
Were there any issues that Mr. Brennan or anybody else in that meeting brought up concerning any of your testimony?
There was just a question of how many times the I hit him came up. It was 3 times.
And were you advised that that's not what you said at your testimony last year?
No,
Two
sir.
times?
What was that?
You said it was 2 times last year?
I honestly can't recall, sir.
Okay, but you just saw that, or you just read that and went over that 3 weeks ago.
I believe so, sir, yeah.
But you can't remember, as you sit here today, just 3 weeks ago, what y'all discussed in terms of how many times you previously testified that you heard the phrase, I hit him.
So previously testified of possibly to 2, but it was 3.
Okay, your memory is clearer now than it was, for instance, a year ago when you testified.
Repeat that?
Sure. Your memory is clearer now, as you sit here, that it was 3 times you heard that, than it was a year ago when you testified that it was 2 times.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does your memory get better with time generally? Your memory. I'm not talking about the royal you. I'm talking about you.
In certain settings, I mean, there are certain things about different aspects that I recall better than others.
Okay. And does your memory tend to get better, or does it fade over time?
It can fade over time, but it depends on the context.
But in this case, you're telling this jury that your memory is better now than it was a year ago when you testified about the exact same circumstance, correct?
Yes, sir.
So defense just point out inconsistent statements. At first it was 2 times, now it's 3 times. He heard it, whatever.
About a week after that, which would be 2 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Who'd you meet with then?
The same group.
And what did you discuss at that meeting?
Again, just prior testimony, and that was really the gist of it.
And tell me the specifics of the prior testimony that you...
Again, it was the how many times we had talked about saying I hit him. Again, it was 3 times. And then there was also the video that was just played for me.
So now you do recall that last year when you testified, it was inconsistent with how you're testifying today. Let me put it that way, correct?
I believe I said I hit him twice on the stand last year.
Right. And if you're saying I hit him 3 times instead of twice, that firefighter Nuttall is inconsistent with your testimony today, correct? You
Yes,
agree
sir,
with
but that is how it went that morning, sir.
Okay, that's not my question. Let me see if I can do it again.
He's just trying to point out it's inconsistent though.
If you testified last year,
Yes, sir.
if you heard the phrase twice, And now a year goes by, and you're testifying in front of this jury this year that you heard it 3 times. Those 2 statements are inconsistent with one another, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you talk at the meeting 2 weeks ago about any other inconsistencies with your testimony?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Well, you were there, and you say not to my knowledge, meaning...
No, sir, we did not.
Okay. So it was just about the number of times that you heard the phrase, I hit him, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You cleared that up in the 2 meetings, 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago. What did you talk about last night?
Mostly just making sure that everything was as it had been. I mean, and by that I mean it was 3 times, and that we were continuously making sure that everything was the way that it had happened that morning.
Everything was the way that Mr. Brennan wanted it to be.
No, sir. The way that it was in, I remember it, and I recall it happening.
You stick with that testimony that it's 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the last night he called you just to make sure one more time you're going to stick with that testimony that it was 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
Just a second. May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just trying to cast doubt on this guy's credibility to the jury. That's all this is.
I told him I was going to tell him what I remembered from that morning.
Which was what?
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Which is how many times?
3 times, sir.
And that's inconsistent with what?
I believe a year ago.
Okay. You had to remove, or somebody had to remove, in order for him to be properly assessed.
I did testify that way, yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned that your memory of that big heavy winter coat was as clear as your memory of other specifics in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
I asked you that exact question, didn't I?
You did.
And I said, your memory of him having that big puffy coat on, which stood out in your mind, was just as clear as the other specifics that you've testified to about the case.
Yes, sir.
About that night. And turns out you were completely wrong about his clothing, correct?
Correct.
Matter of fact, he wasn't wearing a coat at all.
No, sir.
He wasn't wearing a winter coat, correct?
Nope.
He wasn't wearing a heavy winter coat, correct?
Correct.
And he wasn't wearing a puffy, heavy winter coat.
He was not.
Yet you testified that he was wearing all of that, and that was clear in your mind at the time.
Yes, sir.
Yikes. I mean, look at this guy's face. The jury hearing that, they're going to be like second guessing, like, oh, can we even believe everything this guy's saying, dude? So this is really good lawyering right here.
Did Mr. Brennan bring that up during the meeting 3 weeks ago?
He asked about what I had meant when I said appropriately dressed.
So you did talk about something other than just, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, correct?
Yes, sir.
When I asked what y'all talked about, why didn't you tell us that?
To be perfectly honest, sir, I did not remember until right now.
So your memory is fading even after 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Oh, this is a disaster. This is going terrible for them, dude.
Well, let me ask you a different question. Did Mr. Brennan tell you what Mr. O'Keefe was actually wearing?
No, sir. Actually, I believe you did.
Last year, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
It's a short sleeve t-shirt and a little thin wool hoodie, right?
Yes, sir.
Wasn't wearing a hat.
No, sir.
Wasn't wearing, matter of fact, didn't even have a shoe on, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
It obviously goes without saying, but I'm going to ask it anyway. That's not being appropriately dressed for the winter.
No, sir.
And you indicated last year, or let me ask you this way. Is that consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
I could not say, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
Well, last year, you indicate you can't answer that. Last year, you did answer it, didn't you?
Objection.
So I need to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please.
Look at this guy, dude. He's fucking nervous. You can tell. Oh my god, this is literally something out of a movie. He is so nervous.
And Kelly was there as well?
Yes, sir.
Kneeling right beside all 3 of you as firefighter Flamati was giving the chest compressions, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You indicated that the statement was in response to a question that you asked of my client, do you know him?
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Correct.
And she responded to you with the phrase that you've used, I hit him.
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Right. So it's absolutely clear in your mind when that statement was made. You were knelt down over Mr. O'Keefe. Firefighter Flamati was doing the CPR, and Kelly was with both of you when you posed that question.
Yes, sir.
It's a very detailed memory.
Yes, sir.
You indicated, Mr. Brennan, that sticks out in your mind. Is that right?
It does.
But that's not at all what you told Trooper Proctor on February 8th, just 10 days after this incident, is it?
I don't recall what I told Trooper Proctor.
I thought your memory got better with time.
I don't recall that meeting.
Okay.
I recall meeting with him, but I don't recall the extent of what was discussed.
You literally don't recall anything that was discussed in that meeting in that formal interview with the lead detective on this case.
We discussed the case, but I don't, in his words, I'm not sure what he put down.
See, that's sus. How do you not remember that? It's a lead detective.
To Trooper Proctor on February 8th, 10 days after this, was you overheard Miss Reed say, I hit him one time to another female that she was talking to. Correct?
Objection.
No, I'll allow it. Did you say that?
I have no memory of this, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
That her statement was an answer to a question posed by the female or discussion with the female.
Break that down for me, sir.
Sure. Did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 8th that what you heard was Karen Reed speaking to a female, not answering a question that you posed?
Again, I don't recall that specific question.
Did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 8th while you were rendering aid, and at the time you heard the statement, Miss Reed was actually praying over John, your words, praying over John?
I don't recall ever saying that.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mouth is twitching.
Miss Reed having blood on her face, presumably from attempting CPR.
Do you remember telling Trooper Proctor on February 8th that you saw her with blood on her face from CPR?
I do.
So you remember that portion of your conversation with Trooper Proctor, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the praying over John, praying over the victim, you don't remember.
I don't remember ever saying that.
Ever. And the statement, I hit him to another female, you also don't remember that.
No, sir.
So as you sit here, you have no memory of what you just read in this report from Trooper Proctor, the lead investigator on the case.
I have no recollection of ever saying that anybody prayed over anybody ever in this case.
You did see it in his report, though.
Sustained.
So that's a red flag. Very confidently saying he didn't say that, or has no recollection of it at least, but it's in Proctor's report.
Is it true that, in answer to the question, quote, so it's fair to say your memory is a little bit faulty as it pertains to that time frame, your answer was absolutely. Correct?
From last year?
What you testified to last year about conversations that you had with Trooper Proctor around February 8th of 2022.
Yes, sir.
And you agree, as you sit here, that your memory is still faulty about your conversation with him.
With
correct?
Trooper Proctor? Yes, sir.
So you do have a recollection that you never said it. Do you understand the difference?
Oh, sir, I don't believe I've ever said praying. That's really not something that I would have said. I didn't see it that day. It didn't happen. I don't remember ever saying prayed.
So he is outright saying that report is false.
Break that down for me.
You didn't see it that day, and it never happened. That's what you're saying about the praying statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that same exact statement, you also included the phrase, I hit him, correct?
No, sir.
In the statement that you made to Trooper Proctor?
The report that Trooper Proctor wrote?
Correct.
Again, I don't remember ever saying the words praying over him. I do distinctly remember I hit him.
Firefighter Flamati was knelt down providing chest compressions at the same time you were knelt down providing airway support for Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
I had also said that at some point,
That's a
Firefighter
yes or no
Flamati
question.
So I'm going to let the witness answer the question.
had transferred CPR to Firefighter Kelly. Firefighter Kelly did take over compressions at one point.
Okay, that's not my question.
Okay.
My question is an easy one. Did you say that when Miss Reed walked over to you and you had this dialogue with her, she made that statement that Firefighter Flamati was on his knees providing chest compressions at the same time you were knelt down providing airway support?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Firefighter Flamati, in your testimony, appears to be standing up right there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's play the video forward for just a second. You see my client walk back into the frame?
Yes, sir.
At this point, you were watching Firefighter Flamati. He appears to be now providing CPR, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my client is nowhere near you, correct? At least for this clip.
No, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
And the clip that I just played before, the few seconds that I played before, nowhere near you, correct? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and play it forward. Did you see my client?
Yes, sir.
Where is she in the frame?
Behind that other individual.
Behind the SUV?
I believe she's in front of the SUV and behind the other individual.
Okay. I'm at the SUV, that's the white SUV that's in
Yes, sir.
the far distance.
Yes.
That's the back of the SUV. She's behind you, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Not near you.
No.
Okay. Let's go ahead and play it. Go ahead and pause it. Do you see what Firefighter Flamati is still doing throughout this entire clip?
Chest compression?
Okay. Let's go ahead and play it. And what's happening right now?
Now we are transferring to ambulance 1.
God, that is a lot of people there. It's like fucking 8, 9 people there. Redirect.
The video the defense just showed you, did you notice any differences between that video and when I showed it to you, and that it doesn't have the time on it?
Yes, those were 2 different time frames on that video.
And when we spoke about when the defendant said to you, I hit him, that wasn't shown to you in that video just now, was it?
No, it was not.
So if we go back, will you be able to explain where you came from and Firefighter Flamati came from and when you first went over to John O'Keefe?
Sure.
And when you were asked about the clothing, do you remember if you added anything else about your certainty or uncertainty about clothing when you previously gave a statement or testimony?
I believe when I testified last year, I did note I had no part in removing any articles of clothing or anything like that. That was not my job in the back of the truck.
Do you remember any recognition of the fact whether you were certain or not about clothing?
Repeat the question, sir. Sorry.
Is there anything that refresh your memory about what you had said about clothing?
Objection.
You had mentioned that you had some difficulty about clothing. Do you remember what you had previously said?
I remember there was some difficulty of getting the individual's fingers through clothing just because they were so cold. They were difficult to manipulate. Just they really was not conducive to getting clothing off easily.
Did the defendant say to you, I hit him?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yes, sir. 3 times.
And in fact, do you remember, in addition to her saying, I hit him, when you asked her the question, kneeling down over John O'Keefe's body, do you remember if you ever talked about other times that she said it, not to you?
I do not.
Objection.
The answer is I do not. Next question.
Okay.
I heard her having conversations in the background, but that was not my focus at that time.
Okay.
So now, after Mr. Brennan asks you a few questions, now you remember her saying, I hit him a bunch more times, correct?
I remember hearing it in the background several other times.
Really?
Sir?
Never mentioned that on direct examination, did you?
I remember being asked about it, sir. I remember saying what was asked to me.
You were asked, did you ever hear the defendant, Ms. Reed, say anything about I hit him? And your answer was, she said to me, in answer to my question, I hit him 3 times, and that's it.
To me.
You didn't clarify that, oh my gosh, she's running around like a chicken with her head cut off, screaming I hit him to everybody else under the sun.
It was behind me in the background
right.
as I was providing patient care. Again, that was not my focus.
Okay, so you didn't really hear her say anything about it, because you weren't focused on that, right?
I remember hearing generalized commotion in the background, but again, that was not our focus.
So generalized commotion is very different than hearing her say I hit him to other people, correct? You'd agree with that?
Yes, sir.
So what you actually heard was the chaos and the commotion of a chaotic scene, correct? In the background.
In the background.
As you focus on your patient care, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, not specific words coming out of my client's mouth, correct?
To the question that I posed, do you know him?
You're right. We're off that question.
Okay.
That question I got.
Yes, sir.
Triple I hitters.
Correct.
But with regard to what Mr. Brennan just asked you, the generalized commotion, to use your phrase, in the background, you didn't hear any specific words coming out of my client's mouth, did you?
I heard I hit him, but again, it was in the background and it was not my focus.
Well, why didn't you say that on direct? That's kind of an important point. That's why you're here.
Again, if it was neglected on my part, it was not intentional.
Not intentional to neglect that part for the jurors on direct examination.
No, sir.
Certainly not intentional to neglect that part of your testimony on cross-examination.
No, sir.
But you decided to bring it up on re-cross-examination when Mr. Brennan is asking you questions again, correct?
It was asked of me. Yes,
And
sir.
it was after, of course, that your new statement that you've never testified to before, ever, is this generalized commotion included a bunch of I hit him's in the background, correct?
Sir. Yes, sir. That's what happened.
And then I showed you that very scene, didn't I?
You showed me that clip prior to that.
I showed you the very scene that you described where Flamani gets down and starts chest compressions and never stops until the gurney is taken off the frame of the camera to the Isn't that what I showed you?
That is.
I showed you the scene where firefighter Flamani gets down on his knees, begins chest compressions, and never stops until that gurney is taken off camera, off frame, into the ambulance. That's the clip I showed you, correct?
That's the clip you showed me.
And that's exactly when you described your vivid memory from 3.5 years ago. That's exactly the scene that you described when my client supposedly said, I hit him to you, correct?
Again, the clip that you showed me, that was not when it was said. That segment that you showed, that was not when it was said. It was said prior to that, when the three of us were together.
So Flamani was not giving chest compressions then?
He was. The CPR was a continuous effort throughout the
But
resuscitation.
we saw him start it. Firefighter Nuttall, we saw him start it. We saw him walk into the frame, kneel down, and begin the chest compressions, didn't we?
We did.
And at no point, at that time or after, did my client even approach you, did she, in that clip?
She did.
What?
Objection.
Just a question.
Sure,
Mr. Johnson.
sure.
So defense lawyer is saying, in the portion that you said someone was giving chest compressions, you said my client said, I hit him, or whatever, but the video says otherwise. I think this part is just a miscommunication. I don't think this is anyone lying or anything.
Do you need to see that clip again?
Yes, please.
We're not going to show the video again. We've seen 2 videos. Which one is marked?
At the time when my client walked over, you had this dialogue, you heard this statement. It was during the time that firefighter Flamani was given CPR, correct? You described it.
Yes, sir.
But when we actually see firefighter Flamani giving the CPR, as per your description, at no time did my client walk over and have a conversation with you, did she?
She did in the video.
You see, there's like a miscommunication here. I don't know if he's intentionally lying or not, but
Yes, sir.
You'd agree with that, correct?
I would.
And firefighter Flamani had not begun CPR, had he?
I don't believe so.
That's right, he hadn't. But that's the time that my client walked over your general area, correct?
Correct.
Before CPR was started, correct?
CPR was started immediately, sir.
Can we wrap this up?
I don't know if we can, Judge.
Give you a couple more minutes.
so he's saying CPR was happening the whole time. Defense lawyer is saying, no, we can see it wasn't. Who knows if it was or not, dude?
I remember that the swelling had started to, it's referred to kind of as raccoon eyes. It's a bruising of both eyes. There were battle signs.
Do you remember saying, in answer to the question, did it look like, in addition to the egg on the right side of his head in the front, did he also have a black eye on the left side? Your answer is, if memory serves correct, yes.
Yes, sir.
So it's not true that he didn't have any injuries on the left side of his body or face, correct?
That swelling kind of migrates over time to both sides. That is a common occurrence for both eyes to be swollen.
Did he have an injury to the left side of his face?
He did not.
Did he have a black left eye?
Yes, he did.
Would you consider a black eye an injury?
Yes, sir.
What is going on here, dude?
Did he have an injury to the left side of his face?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That was a funny line of questioning there.
Did you ever see the homeowner come out the front door?
Don't recall.
You don't recall, or you didn't?
I have no idea who the homeowner is.
And you never saw anybody come out of the front of the house?
No, sir.
Never saw the homeowner come outside.
2022, just 10 days after this incident. Did you ever say that you heard in the background, I hit him over and over again?
I don't recall.
All right.
When you testified at the grand jury, last question. When you testified at the grand jury, did you ever say that?
I don't recall.
I still can't believe they let her do this.
Remember it, but I question, do I remember it because it's been relived so much? I mean, when I see the video of me driving from the waterfall, like what I just described, tapping the brakes when I crossed the intersection, Washington over Sherman Street, do I actually remember that I kind of slowly proceeded through that green light? No, I don't actually remember that. But I've seen the video so many times that you then question, did I remember it on my own? Or was my memory jogged? But I also wondered, did I say, could I have hit him? Or was it told to me that I said I hit him? And I knew I never could have said that. So the closest I must have said was, did I hit him? I know I said I hit him, but did I really say it as many times as law enforcement's claiming I said it?
Hi, my name is Carrie Roberts.
So I'm not sure how this lady's involved yet because I didn't watch the first trial, but she seems to be a longtime friend of O'Keefe.
And the first thing she said was, Carrie, John's dead. And then she hung up.
Was there anything else in the conversation that she said to you at that time?
She said, I'm going to drive to your house. Would you drive my car? And I said, yes. I wasn't super worried. I mean, he didn't come home, but they were out drinking, so I assumed, like my husband said, he's probably on somebody's couch. As we approached Fairview, at the house. You mean the house or the street?
Yes,
The house. Jen said, my sister's house is right up here. And I said, okay. And as we approached the house, Karen from the backseat is now screaming, there he is, let me the F out of this car. And she's now kicking the back door to get out.
When you heard the defendant scream, there he is, and started kicking the car door, did you see anything?
I did not.
Did you see anybody?
I did not.
Did you look?
I looked.
Was there anything that impeded your ability to see far?
No, it was just snow.
How far could you see when she was yelling, there he is?
How far could I see?
Yes.
I mean, the visibility wasn't great.
Okay. Was she pointing or giving any direction?
No, she just said, there he is.
Okay. What happens next?
And then I unlocked the car. I looked over, I didn't see anything, and I unlocked it so she could get out of the back seat. I looked at Jen and I said, she's crazy. And then I turned around and watched, and she ran over to a mound of snow.
When she started running, before she got anywhere, did you see anything at that point?
I did not.
Were you looking?
I was looking. She said, there he is, so I'm looking around to see where he is.
And you could see nothing?
I did not.
You see her?
She is crazy. Are they trying to get the point across that she knew exactly where she is because she remembers fucking hitting him on purpose? Is that what they're trying to get here?
Run around or directly?
She ran right over to the mound of snow.
Could you tell what the mound of snow was from the car?
Once she got to it, yes, it was. Once she got to it, you could tell it was a mound of snow that was the length of a body.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Brennan. I need to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please.
All right, that's pretty much it for day one of testimony. This case is pretty wild and there's a lot of components to it. So if I sound stupid, I'm sorry. Comment down below what you guys think. Hit subscribe. I love you guys. Peace out.